Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. We've got a lot of information, so buckle up. I hope you're having a great day. We're gonna be hitting 2024 legislation, and no, that's not meant to ruin your day. That's supposed to help you have a good year next year as we advocate against some of these bad pieces of legislation. To walk us through that, we've brought back Rick Travis, who is the legislative director for CRPA. Rick, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we get into this today, guys, as always, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. Leave a comment down in the comment section and hit that notification bell. It really helps with the algorithms to get this video out to as many people as possible. We are trying to inform as many people as possible so that in 2024, when they go to the ballot box, they can have a high priority on the Second Amendment and Second Amendment legislation so that we can get some of these people proposing these bad bills out of that building in Sacramento. So, Rick, I feel like there's a couple different components today. I want to hit some huge topics on legislation that we're going to see next year. I'm talking about gun-free zones. I'm talking about dogs. I'm talking about voluntary registries as well as kids. But before we get into that, why do we even know what bills are going to be on the docket for next year? This isn't a situation where January 1st we're going to see new legislation. These are 2-year bills, right? So can you go ahead and just describe what exactly is a 2-year bill and how does this process work in Sacramento?
Sure. I'm going to have to take, because there's a lot of ways you can become a 2-year bill, but basically, Kevin, what people need to realize is the legislative session isn't 1 year. In many states across the nation, sessions exist for a year. We have 2-year sessions. So there's 2 times within a session, which is a term for an assemblyman, to be able to bring different bills together. So last year, the odd year, 2023, or I should say this year, it'd be last year when we ended January. Those bills are bills that they didn't meet a deadline. It could be a fiscal deadline, Kevin, where the budget was up and people weren't sure how much money, although that didn't seem to be a big issue at the end of the sessions, that can hold it up. It cannot make it out of the committee. The author may think he doesn't or she doesn't have enough votes, so they hold it back. And so they can literally park it in the House of Origin. Being a Senate bill, it'd be a Senate in the House, the Senate House, or Assembly bill in the Assembly. Or they can hold it after they've crossed into the other house and hold it there until the next session. And when we open up on January 3rd, 2024, those 2-year bills are up. And here's what makes it interesting. The author can decide, no, not good, and then it's a dead bill. It's dead forever. The author can decide, oh, I'm going to do the bare minimums and keep it alive and hope I can get across the line in late August, which often is the mode of operandi that they'll use, the idea that they can do it that way. And then they can pop it up at any time where if they see a shot, no one's paying attention, they think the opposition's not ready for it, they can try to push it for a floor vote very quickly to get it across the line into the governor's desk. So 2-year bills can be aggravating and dangerous at the same time. And we've got a few of them from this last year.
Well, let's talk about that for a second because we do have a lot of pieces of legislation that we are aware about. I mean, some people I'm sure would say it's better, you have a better opportunity to fight against something when you know what you're fighting against. So here we are still in 2023, looking at 2024. Let's talk about these gun-free zones for a second. I'm talking specifically on AB 851, which would be a pilot program for a gun-free zone. Is it for the entire city of Sacramento? Or is it the county of Sacramento? And I mean, how exactly does this equate to a lot of the sensitive area ordinances or pieces of legislation that we've also seen, like Senate Bill 2?
Yeah, so Assemblyman McCarty in AB 851, the goal here is, a lot of these different politicians want to be able to clothe themselves and look, I just solved everything. And a gun-free zone, to people that don't understand what that is, it can seem like, well, if I just remove all the firearms, nothing bad happens. And I would argue it's almost the opposite because, look, criminals by and large are bullies. They want to go to a target-rich environment that doesn't have the ability to hurt them. And so if they know there's a zone where people can't have firearms, then they don't have to watch the population. They can move and do what they want because there's no external possible threat to them. So if I look around, I don't see law enforcement, I got a 99% chance of pulling this off. Whereas if I go into an area where there's known to be people carrying concealed, people that may have firearms in their home, etc., well, now it's a little dicier. Like, I don't know what I'm going to meet when I go through the home. I mean, I'm going to have to work a little harder. Maybe make the decision. Oh, they got a big dog, they're flying American flag, NRA sticker, CRPA sticker, or some others, don't tread on me sticker on the back of their car. Probably going to bypass that house because that might not be so good to my health if I'm a criminal. What these rules would do is in 851, it was to take off an area of Sacramento that largely had government buildings, but also had apartments and condos and other things, and turn it into a gun-free zone. And one of my concerns is you got people that have purchased. I mean, apartments aren't just rent. Some people buy apartments. You've got people's residences to start with that are purchased that literally with the stroke of a pen from the governor overnight can be turned into an area where they're not criminals because they had firearms legally on the 31st of December, and on January 1st, they're now illegal for having those same firearms. Secondly, the government, I mean, I tell this to people all the time, we don't have a government that puts out broadcasts that says, by the way, here's the next 250, driver's laws that you need to know. They don't do that. They don't tell you these are the new insurance laws, new healthcare laws, new real estate laws. You have to hope you belong to an association or get lucky and pick it up in a news broadcast. Otherwise, you're never going to know what that is. And so one of my concerns with a lot of these gun-free zones is, as you will know, you can look to Aurora, Colorado as a great case example where the shooter said cased different theaters to find one that was a gun-free zone. You can look to what happened here in California in San Bernardino. They went to a place that was a gun-free zone. I mean, putting that up there is like asking for trouble.
Well, that's actually what I was going to touch on. That this isn't exactly an opinion anymore. This is pretty well documented. I know that there have also been studies from of within the prison population, just asking them these questions: what kind of places are you targeting? And homes that were less likely to have armed people in them were targeted by a lot of people also. So this is a pretty well documented thing. Creating a gun-free zone just creates a soft target for somebody to prey upon, and then you add on top of that, what are you going to do if you have a firearm in Sacramento already? Are they going to allow you to just dispose of it? I guess that's what we kind of claim is the end goal in a lot of this legislation anyways, or you just become a criminal. If you're living in an apartment building, what are you going to do? Rent a locker outside the county so that you can store your firearms? I'm not 100% sure how they think this would work without having to force people to dispose of their firearms. But I guess more of that to come. And
I think they have learned from watching us, and I get it. I get why people made this decision for last 25 years, but a lot of firearms owning people at various levels of this push by the left here in California have said, I'm out. And they went to other states. And when they get to those states, they realize it just takes a couple more years for California's ideologies to start to bleed into them. You can look at Idaho a decade ago, did not have the firearms issues that it does today, largely because large populations of Californians have now moved to Idaho, Texas, other states. And we've talked about that before on the video. I think one of the issues also is, Kevin, the people in the Capitol, like particularly McCarty, wants downtown Sacramento to be a mirror of his beliefs. And so, if I'm forced to have to get rid of everything and become a criminal, I'm going to move. And then the people that move in aren't going to move in with fire. They're not going to be firearms owners because obviously it's a gun-free zone. And so they're able to change the demographics by using laws like this to influence what that particular precinct or that particular section of the county or city looks like.
This is just so much to dive in on. I mean, let's be real, we're probably going to have to do some individual videos on these in the future to really deep dive into some of the negative consequences that can come out of this bad legislation. For now, though, let's move on to dogs really quick. Dogs have been under attack, specifically within the hunting community, for a little while now. This isn't necessarily something that's new, but we are seeing a couple bills in the legislature. One that I thought was just super bizarre, although I guess it kind of follows suit with the way that they treat firearms owners. But first one is AB 554. This would allow for the creation of a nonprofit, essentially to enforce protection for violence against animals or cruelty against animals. And then the second one, AB 742, which this is the one that I thought was bizarre. It would prevent police canines from biting unless it was in a life-threatening situation. And this is kind of the age-old question that we see with things like home invasions, right? Where they, in California, basically put all of that responsibility on the person in the home being attacked. So what is it about dogs in general that you feel is being attacked in California right now? And how does this pan out? I mean, specifically also AB 554, with this creation of a nonprofit, what are some of the negatives that we can see there?
Well, I think first you have to look at the meta argument in this, and that overarching argument is, we have a state legislature that is pushing to make criminals not the bad guys. The people that create these violent crimes, they're just misunderstood, Kevin. And I'm being sarcastic when I say, but this is what some of our legislators are saying. They need to be on the streets and we need to protect them. And part of the way we protect them is we let them out early and we make sure we disarm law-abiding citizens. And part of that disarming is, look, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see how sinister this is. If I'm trying to do all the things that they're suggesting, and if all the laws that we have blocked weren't blocked, they would have it so that in the middle of the night, 2:00 in the morning, I hear broken glass. I would have to get out of my bed, walk a distance to a safe. I'd have to open a safe up. Then I'd have to take the firearm out. I'd have to use a biometric or key, which I'm going to have to find in the middle of the night, to open the trigger lock off of it. Then I'm going to have to go to another safe, get the magazine or get the ammunition, load the firearm. Wait, I'm dead by that point. My only hope to stave off something is a protection dog. So going after police dogs first is their tactic. If they can remove canines from law enforcement that has people that are focused on training those dogs every day, and they win that argumentation, then removing your dog from you becomes very easy. And I had a lot of people when I addressed 742 this last year going, well, Rick, this is just law enforcement. Okay, well, you're not seeing the bigger picture, because when you go to 554, what 554 allows is for a group of people to form a nonprofit that doesn't cost that much. Kevin, you can do it generally for about $1,000 to $1,500 here in California. You call yourself whatever protection group for animals, and then you can designate members of your board to be your enforcement people that go out and say, oh, Kevin, you jerked the dog on its choke chain when you were training it. That's cruel. We're seizing your dog. At the point you go to stop seizing them, you're stopping somebody in the performance of their duties. So now you're guilty of a misdemeanor or felony, depending on what you do. Wow. Number one, those people didn't go to training, but this is, again, becomes a scare tactic, because if you go to a neighborhood and you go, hey, Bill down the street just lost his dog because this group said he was doing it, no one's going to take their dog out. Insurance companies, I mean, you can just see how this plays out. Insurance companies are going, well, yeah, you can't have that dog because we can't afford the insurance on it. It's too big a risk. And so then people don't have dogs at all. And that is part of the goal.
I guess it comes down to accountability, and that's actually a really good point with law enforcement. I can't even think of the number of laws that I've seen where there are exemptions written out specifically for law enforcement. A lot of times, that's done carefully and for good reason. But if you take the need for law enforcement to have something away before you even take it away from the citizens, that's going to make the argument that much easier against the citizens. But where is the accountability here? Where is the vetting portion of this bill, AB 554? Is it just going to be a band of miscreants putting together a nonprofit because they came up on $1,500, who can essentially terrorize an entire community, taking away loved parts of people's family because they see the world in a specific light? Where's the accountability there?
There is no accountability. Kevin, this is a series of bills that we have faced over the past decade, and a lot of our members question why we're getting into this space at the beginning, aligned with the American Kennel Club, the United Kennel Club, and others. And the reason is because, at the top of the argument, what I always tell folks is if you remove dogs, then you have no way to go pick up the things that you hunt, whether it be waterfowl or upland game birds. Therefore, you're guilty of wanton waste. Therefore, you're going to get cited. You're going to become a criminal. And therefore, you're just not going to hunt because you don't have a dog to hunt. That's part of their goal, because then that allows them to go after a lot of other things here in the state. So we obviously don't want that. We're not going to play that game. We're going to fight against this like we have been. But you got to realize there's been everything from, weird types of dog insurance proposals that were only for certain breeds of dogs, not every dog. Yet a lot of people get bit by the little dogs that people put in their strollers and stuff. So like to say, oh, Labrador Retrievers, America's favorite dog, are a threat, and a lot of the toy dogs aren't. That's not true at all. Looking at some of the other egregious things, they've proposed people being able to shoot and kill your dog out in the field, and there'd be no recourse for you as the owner of the dog. There have been people that have tried to get groups of lawyers together that they could sue you because your neighbor, across the street doesn't like you, Kevin, or the way you put your trash cans out. So she says, I think that dog or cat is under duress, and on behalf of the cat or dog, I want to institute a lawsuit against my neighbor. This is the kind of stuff that we have had to stop in the Capitol, because it directly relates to what we're doing, because people are trying to find any way they can to make the person that lives next door across the street a criminal.
I guess we'll have to keep our eye on that, and surely, there are a lot of ways that pets, are just part of our family, but also the usefulness that they have for our family. So we're definitely going to have to keep an eye on those. But let's talk about other ways that we can become criminals. Why don't we? There's a couple, and I would argue that these are a little bit more of the laughable pieces of legislation that we're seeing now, with a very sinister undertone. We've got a couple of bills that are using the process of a voluntary internet registry on it. So you've got Assembly Bill 1047, which essentially is creating a program where you can go online and register your family members. You can put their emails down so that they are notified every time you purchase a firearm. Why they would need to know that, I guess you can ask the people who are writing this bill. To be honest with you, everybody in my family already knows when I'm going to get a gun, because they're all proud of it, as I am, but don't necessarily think that's the goal here. And then you've also got AB 29, which would kind of inversely, it creates a voluntary registry online for people who are on the do not sell list. I guess this would serve as a secondary source for background checks. Although I just don't understand, and tell me, Rick, if you can, what you think the rationale is behind these legislators. How many people are going to go online and register themselves as a person that is not to be sold a firearm to? Or how many people are actually going to go online and think to themselves, I need to make sure that everybody I know knows that I'm purchasing a firearm right now? How ridiculous is this?
Well, it's ridiculous, but it's sinister, Kevin. And it is for a couple of reasons. One, Californians appear to me personally to have forgotten that it's we the people, meaning we the boss, and the legislature works for us. That's why it's been traditionally called public service. But instead, we tend to see ourselves as the serfs serving the few lords that live up there. And that's got to change. Here's the deal. The legislature sees itself as the parent. So a lot of us have had parents or other people in positions of power over us have said at first, hey, I suggest you mow the lawn once a week. That would be really helpful to the family. And maybe you do for a couple of weeks, and you're like, no, I'm going to go do something else on Saturday, so you don't do it. And then comes the hammer of new law. Saturdays, you will always mow the lawn. So sometimes they try this stuff and people don't realize it. Look at Assembly Bill 29 from Gabriel, who's no friend of our community, who works tirelessly to dismantle firearms ownership in this state. He's the one that came up with the voluntary sign up list. Well, here's some of the problems I have with it. One, you go to the doctor, you're going through something, say you lost a family member, your spouse, your girlfriend, whatever, you're despondent. That's a short-term issue, not a long-term issue, but they're like, hey, you might want to sign up for this just right now, just to make sure, be on the safe side. Well, that's why a lot of people take meds, do a lot of stuff because somebody suggested it to them at a point of vulnerability. So they do it. Well, you know what the bill doesn't tell you? How you get off the list, if you can ever get off the list.
Well, it actually sounds like what you're saying is this is possibly the concession of an inch, where someplace in the future they're going to end up taking a mile.
Oh, more than a mile. They're going to take at least a marathon worth of stuff in this. And this is saying it up that then they can sit there and say, well, Californians didn't have a problem with us doing this, so we're going to do this. And it's death by 1,000 cuts. And I keep telling people it's why we have to hammer them on stuff like this, because I had a couple of former Boy Scouts that went through rough patches. One of them lost a significant member of their family. The other one lost a person they thought they were going to marry. And it's like they both went to urgent cares, and both the medical staff of the urgent cares immediately assumed, because the person showed up and said, hey, I'm really depressed. Oh, well, are you suicidal? Do you need a 24-hour hold? Do you because people have been conditioned at the moment you show up and say that. Yet this is out of the same government that says, why don't people want to get help for mental health crisis? Well, because you guys always overreact, and there's such a stigma with it. And this adds to that stigma. And again, when you look at 1047, it's the same idea. We've seen repetitive bills proposed out of the Capitol that says, hey, Kevin, any classmate of yours should be able to turn you in and say that you're not safe and become a red flag thing. Okay, well, define a classmate. Somebody I went to school with online, they're a classmate, technically. You didn't define that. What about the people that I went to school with over half a century ago in kindergarten? They were classmates. I mean, think about some of the girls that you might have didn't even realize in junior high liked you, and you brushed them off, and you never knew. And they're like, well, that guy's a total jerk and you should never have a gun because crushed my feelings in the 7th grade.
I guess this is exactly where advocacy comes into play. I know that CRPA has continued to try to bring new tools for people to advocate to their elected official. We're certainly going to be using those next year. This is where it becomes important, right? Because these bills have already been written. These bills are on their last leg for the 2024 legislative session. They will be up for votes. So we need to let our elected officials know that what's most important to them, which is what? Getting reelected, right? What's most important to them is on the line. If they pass these pieces of legislation, we need to let them know that they work for us, and we're not going to tolerate these sorts of laws. Speaking of tolerating something, let's get into the last one that I wanted to talk about. This having to do with kids. We saw an onslaught of legislation this year within the firearms community, specifically called out by Gavin Newsom multiple times, relating to the next generation. He has made it clear from day one he wants firearms culture to end, and the way that you do that is by making sure the young generation doesn't know what it is. So here we are going, and this is a bill that just simply didn't get enough votes. I know that we had to advocate against this one in the 2023 session, right? So this is Assembly Bill 262. This is on creating a group of stakeholders to create regulations for children's camps. What do we see with this one going into 2024?
So this is another one of those, it's a multiple 2-year bill. And when I say that, it's a zombie bill like Assembly Bill 28 was last year. We have faced this bill off now. This is our 4th rendition. It started almost 7 years ago. Unfortunately, there was a young girl named Roxy who lived in Senator Portantino's district who died as a result of an incident at a city camp pool. And the parents obviously upset. The senator picked it up. And when the senator first did it, he had a shotgun approach, and he had everything from horseback riding to shooting ranges to high ropes courses to basketball, swimming, like just name it, anything you could ever conceive of doing a summer camp, and said, we got to get this under control. A lot of summer camps weren't well regulated. A lot of them are extremely well and have been well regulated for over a century. And so it was a typical knee-jerk reaction to capital. We were able to stop it because there was a tremendous outpour of no, this isn't going to happen. And so they narrowed it down. It finally got moved over to Assemblyman Holden. And Holden has ran this bill by cutting out a lot of the things where he saw opposition. And so it ended up being horseback riding, swimming pools, and ranges. But ranges got moved to the top of the list. Why? Because going after people in the horse world and going after swimmers, that has no sex appeal within the liberal left. But going after firearms and ranges does. And it's deceptive in two ways. The first way is it's called a study bill. And so a lot of our constituents are like, well, it's just a study bill. Yeah, well, okay, here's the problems with just a study bill. That just a study bill has only people that you don't want in there talking to you about how a safer range is. They're not talking to people like CRPA, who our training department is the latest part of a 150-year tradition of providing firearm safety. It's in our motto, the first two words, be safe. Are we a part of the stakeholder group in that discussion? No. But are there people that come from anti-firearms groups? Yes. And they don't understand what it takes to keep firearms safe. I mean, we have millions of trigger pulls up and down this state in various sports, 0 injuries, no one's going to the hospital. And instead of counting on those stakeholders with that knowledge base, they don't want to do that. The study bill will create probably 24 at least ideas that will become bills a year and a half later to take the rights and take it and change it. So that's why we're front and center on this. We have formed a coalition representative of major camping groups, ranging from youth groups such as Boy Scouts of America and Future Farmers, going all the way across the board to groups representing various religious organizations and regional organizations to fight this. And we're going to continue to fight it, because if we're going to have something like this, it needs to have the key stakeholders in there to make sure things are actually being done correctly.
Well, yeah, I was going to say you hit the nail on the head there, because the back end of those study bills are the recommendations, right? So if you don't control the stakeholders within the study bill, or if you just allow the study bill without any of the proper stakeholders in place, it creates all those recommendations that I'm sure an anti-Second Amendment legislature would just love to take them up on as a scientific study. To decrease the amount of firearms in camps where kids get a lot of wholesome value out of. So I guess as a whole, we got a lot more than this. But these were some of the big pieces that I saw for 2024 legislation. Any final thoughts getting through this holiday season and looking forward in January to the session starting?
Yeah, when the session starts in January, there are going to be a lot of bills. They'll have till February 16th to introduce them. These bills are going to be out. We're going to have federal bills. And so we're going to have a pretty big picture. We've got an early primary. The earliest we've ever had it will be a part of Super Tuesday. So our primary is March 5th. And so as a result, we're going to see some politicians that normally would be out in front, not so far out in front, because it's a close race, to be honest, in their particular districts. And we're going to see some others go for broke because they think they're going to get the votes. So it's going to be pretty volatile, pretty fast paced, moving pretty hard. And I suspect we're going to have a lot of conversations in the first couple of months of the new year on the various bills that are going to be pushed forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely see some deep dives coming on some of these pieces of legislation, because it is not always what is written on the piece of paper. It's about being able to look forward and see the negative or positive consequence of any bill written like this and understanding it. Rick, I want to thank you very much. I know that you're a busy guy. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to be with us and explain all this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And if you like these videos and content like this, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps, especially with this legislation. We need to get this info out to as many people as possible. We got to have the Second Amendment as a priority when we go to the ballot box, or we're going to continue and see our rights erode away. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.